If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe. It would really help the channel, and we have battle reports, boarding actions, and list videos every week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by. Custodes Solar Spearhead Overview. I'm excited for this one. It's a new detachment, and I like this one quite a bit. This video is an overview of our new Adeptus Custodes detachment, the Solar Spearhead. And this detachment looks like a lot of fun, using units we have not used all edition, except for one of these units. The one side that I can see though is that this is going to be the Forge World detachment. The detachment revolves around Custodes vehicles, with a few mounted in infantry, but mostly our vehicles. I will go over the detachment, give my thoughts on the rules. I have plenty of videos coming up for this detachment, the top characters and top other units for this detachment coming out next, and then we do have a list videos. Stay tuned because there's going to be lots of list videos, unit options, and more. Let's move on to the rules for the Solar Spearhead detachment. We still have the army rule, the martial kata, where we have sustained hits 1 or lethal hits in melee combat. And the Solar Spearhead detachment rule, it's more like rules. The first one is Orc Armor, while Adeptus Custodes Vehicle unit from your army is at starting strength, unless that unit is aircraft or battle shock, add 2 to the objective control characteristic of models in that unit. Next is while Adeptus Custodes Vehicle unit from your army is below starting strength, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, reroll the hit roll of 1. And then last we have while Adeptus Custodes unit from your army is below half strength, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, reroll a hit roll of 1 and a wound roll of 1. The next part of the detachment rule is called Moritoi Ancients. Add 2 to the move characteristic of models in Adeptus Custodes Walker units from your army. Add 1 to the advance and charge rolls made for such units. You also have in the muster army step, you can select up to 2 Adeptus Custodes Walker models from your army. Those selected units gain the character keyword. And yes, they can be your warlord and they can have enhancements. At starting strength, our Contemptors will have an OC of 5 and the Telemon will have an OC of 6. It's very good for stealing and holding primary as a vehicle unit. The +1 to hit will come up more often than I originally thought because we are hard to kill, and anytime the enemy fails to kill a vehicle, that vehicle will now hit back even harder. The below half strength to get the reroll of hit and wound of 1 will be a lot better on the Dreadnoughts. The Venerable Contemptor, when it stands back up, depending on the roll when we stand back up, could be rerolling its hits and wounds of 1 as soon as it stands back up. Our vehicles are now much more reliable at taking objectives and doing damage. A +2 to the move and +1 to the advance and charge on walkers is a huge buff to our Dreadnoughts. These were so slow, and we have an advance and charge stratagem in here too, so now these Dreadnoughts have some serious movement and some serious threat range. Being able to make 2 walker models into character models with enhancements is such a fun and different rule. We can have 0 Custodes infantry units in this detachment if we choose to. I really like these detachment rules. Next up is the Solar Spearhead enhancements. Our first one is Adamantine Talisman for 25 points, Adeptus Custodes model only, improve the attacks, strength, and damage characteristic of melee weapons equipped by the bearer by 1. I was first thinking this would be great on the Telemon. You put the double fist on there, you now have 8 attacks at strength 13, damage 4. After looking at our Dreadnoughts, I think the Contemptor Galatus would be the best target for this enhancement. We would have to make the Galatus a character from the detachment rule to do so, but I still think this is a great target. That Galatus melee weapon would now have 9 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 9, AP 2, damage 4. If it was below starting strength, you'd also be re-rolling any of the 1s to hit. So this thing would be very reliable and hit like a truck. This is one of my favorite of the new enhancements, an all-around more damage output enhancement, and it's Adeptus Custodes model only, so you can put this on some of your infantry characters as well. Next up is Augury Uplink for 25 points. It's Adeptus Custodes model only. The bearer has the Feel No Pain +5 ability. And this is also any Custodes character, so you can put this on some of your infantry characters if you want to as well. Every character loves a 5+ Feel No Pain. For now, I want to try this on the Telemon with his toughness 10, 12 wounds, a 2-up save, 4-up invulnerable, -1 damage, and a 5-up Feel No Pain. Very nice. There's also a stratagem you can throw on him as well in here that would make him even tougher. And it could also be a target for the solo shield captain on Jetbike, just giving him a bit more survivability on the table when you're flying around doing some utility with a solo shield captain. Then we have Honored Fallen, and this is an aura ability, 15 points, Adeptus Custodes Vehicle model only, so you would have to use that detachment rule to give one of these walkers the character keyword. And what this does is while an Adeptus Custodes infantry or mounted unit is within 6 inches of the bearer, each time a model in this unit makes an attack, re-roll the hit roll of 1. This enhancement is useful when you're bringing a lot of Virtus Praetors or Sagittarum or even Custodian Guard, just some infantry that does have some decent shooting. Other than that, since it is infantry and mounted, I would pass on this one unless I'm taking a fair amount of infantry in my list. I do have a list that is coming that does have this stratagem in it though, and some infantry. And like I said, this is Custodes Walker model only, so we can't put this on any of our shield captains on Dawn Eagle jet bikes or any of our infantry shield captains. And last up is Veteran of the Cataphracti, and is a aura once again for 10 points. And this is another Walker model only enhancement. Again, another aura enhancement as well, and this would be much better if it was fallback and charge, but most of our units do not really care about fallback and shoot. The grab tags and the Venerable Land Raider maybe, but most of the time you just shoot your way out. And those are our 4 enhancements for the Solar Spearhead. Let's move on to the stratagems. Our first stratagem is going to be Emperor's Vengeance for 1 CP, and this is in the fight phase. It is a 4+ fight on death. If you're in a walker unit though, you can have a 3+ fight on death. A 4+ fight on death or a 3+ with a walker for 1 CP is fantastic. And this is just what we need to combat melee heavy lists. The Galatas Dreadnought will be a great target for the stratagem with all those attacks it has. And this is a stratagem that is exactly what we needed of this detachment. We have ways to answer shooting and melee lists with this detachment. Now opponents will think twice about charging into our dreadnoughts. Will it fight on death, or will I not even be able to kill it? And now it'll be below starting strength and hit me back even harder because it'll be re-rolling the hits of 1 from the detachment rule, or even the wound roll of 1 if you get below half strength. Next up is Flawless Construction. In your opponent's shooting phase or fight phase, just after an enemy has selected its targets, 1 Adeptus Custodes Vehicle unit, so it has to be a vehicle unit. If that attack's strength is higher than this vehicle's toughness, -1 from the wound roll. This is an absolute must for this detachment. Most of our vehicles are under that toughness 12, so las cannons wound our Caladius grav tanks and dreads on a 3+. With this stratagem, it is now a 4+. And once again, it will make the opponent wary to shoot our tanks. If they don't kill them, now we'll be re-rolling our hits of 1 with those tanks. And this should really add to our survivability against those big, high-strength damage attacks. So this will really add their survivability to these tanks and to our vehicles and dreadnoughts. I'm really excited about this stratagem. All of these stratagems are only 1 CP, and that's fantastic. Next is Punishment Inescapable. In your shooting phase, 1 Adeptus Custodes unit, so it doesn't have to be a vehicle unit. That unit ignores cover, and it ignores any modifiers to ballistic skill or the hit roll. This is Adeptus Custodes unit, allowing us to use this on our Land Raiders, our Caladius, but also the Sagittarum or Melta-Spear Custodian Guard, or anything with some decent shooting. Not really a stratagem we'll be using on our dreadnoughts, although the Telemon might have an option for this. On the grav tanks, on the other hand, I can see this being used if we have some CP in the bank. This can make those strength 12, AP 3, damage D6 +2 shots, ignoring cover or any hit roll modifiers. If you're shooting at anything with stealth or smoke, you're just going to ignore that -1 to hit with the stratagem and ignore cover. So it's a great stratagem to get a little extra bang out of your buck for these grav tanks. Caladius is bracketed. Use this stratagem to ignore cover and still hit on 2+ since you're ignoring any hit modifiers. And since below starting strength, you re-roll your hits of 1. So you can really use this to upscale the damage of your tanks and your Land Raiders and the shooting of your army. Here is the big bad of the detachment. In your movement phase, just after an Adeptus Custodes Vehicle unit from your army advances, until the end of the turn, your unit is eligible to shoot in a turn in which you advance. And if your unit is the walker keyword, until the end of the turn, you can declare a charge when you advance. So this is advance and charge for your dreadnoughts. And this adds so much potential threat to our army, even more so when running a very heavy dreadnought list. The Telemon has a base movement of 8 inches, so you add that detachment rule, now you're moving 10 inches, and then with the +1 to advance, that is another 4 on average. Now the Telemon moves a 14-inch on average with the advance, then you use this stratagem on this Telemon, so now you can charge it. So there's a 21-inch on average charge threat range from this Telemon, and the Contemptors will have a 19-inch since they only move 6 instead of the 8 that the Telemon does move. And this really does add a lot of potential speed and threat to our list. These things will hit very hard in melee, so the army has to respect them. They can't just stand there and hope that you're not going to use this stratagem. They have to respect it. And this also can add a potential 6 inches on the grav tank's movement with the advance and shoot. It will force the enemy to respect the grav tank's shooting even more. A possible 16-inch move on these tanks is scary. If the enemy's not paying attention and they think you're going to move that 10, you can pop this stratagem and get your nose out just a little bit to get some shots down range. So it's an awesome stratagem for 1 CP. There's so much potential with this stratagem. Next up is Unstoppable at the start of your movement phase, and that is important with this one. It is at the start of your movement phase. One Adeptus Custodes Vehicle or a Custodes mounted unit. Until the end of the phase, models in your unit can move horizontally through models and terrain features. So that's enemy models, your models, and terrain features. Another useful stratagem that just feels cool and fun to use. It is vehicle and mounted unit only. Also, like I said, at the start of the movement phase. So we will have to use this before we do any advance rolls or movement. It does make it a bit worse since we do not know which will get a high advance or a low advance roll. Still a great stratagem. The slow movement and going around terrain were my main complaints in my Dreadnought deep dives. This detachment rule and the stratagems fix that. And this will add even more what if I do this threat the enemy has to think about. There's a lot of things in this detachment the enemy has to think about. Maybe we could advance and charge. Maybe we could go through some terrain. Maybe we can ignore some cover with our shooting and do some real damage with our tank. We could advance our tanks out and shoot them. There's just so many things the enemy has to worry about, and this adds even more to it. And last up is Wrathful Advance. In the fight phase, just before an Adeptus Custodes unit from your army piles in, and this is any Adeptus Custodes unit from your army, so you don't have to be a vehicle or a walker. And to the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes a pile-in move, it can move D3 plus 3 instead of the 3 inches. And this, in my opinion, is the worst of the new stratagems. It's not terrible, it's just not something we're going to use a lot. And D3 plus 3 is not something we can plan for. What you can do is possibly charge an enemy with 2 units, activate one of those units, you get the kill, and then you use this stratagem on the second unit to try for a 4 to 6 inch pile-in to tag the other unit. It's still not something we will use often, and the randomness makes it only really worth it if it is a 4 inch pile-in away, or if it's game deciding if we get a 5 inch or a 6 inch pile-in. I just don't like the idea of using a CP for this when there's so many other strong stratagems in this detachment. You may need a 5 or a 6. You roll a D3, you get a 1, you only move 4, doesn't happen, and it's a waste of CP. I would have loved if this was the 6 inch like I've seen in some of these other detachments where it's a 6 inch pile-in and a 6 inch consolidate. That would be scary, but a D3 plus 3 is just not something we can plan for. That is the detachment rule, the enhancements, and the stratagems. So let's move on to some final thoughts. I'm really excited to try this detachment out on the table. I'll probably play a solo game tonight or tomorrow just to get a handle on the rules before I bring someone on the channel to play against. It helps with recording if I already know the rules and have a good idea of how they work, so I'm not always looking them up, so it just speeds up the process. If you would like me to record some sort of how to play or something similar out of the solo game, let me know in the comments. Needing so much Forge World to make lists work is kind of a bummer, but we needed some Forge World support other than Grav Tank goes boom. Have no fear though, I have a video coming out today or tomorrow with 3 lists for each detachment. One is all Codex, one is combined arms, and one will be all vehicles. Then we will be releasing some more in-depth list videos as we learn how to play this detachment more and more. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stick around for some more Solar Spearhead content, subscribe for weekly battle reports, list videos, boarding actions, and other Warhammer 40K content. Thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by.